The rain came sideways off I90, needling the neon fork that buzzed over my roof. Midnight had passed an hour ago. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and old jukebox vinyl. I was wiping down booth 3 when the headlights showed. 7 rigs in tight formation, chrome bright even through the downpour. They parked in their usual line, engines idling just long enough to make the windows shudder, then cut out all at once. The doorbell chimed. 7 men, same oil-streaked jackets, same truck stop jokes. They found their stools without glancing up. I poured coffees before they asked, muscle memory by now. The sign over the counter clocked 1:13 a.m. exactly. 10 minutes later, a state trooper pulled in for pie, rain dripping from the brim of his hat. He looked around the empty counter, nodded at me, and squinted through the glass toward the lot. "You openin' for a convoy?" I followed his gaze. The monitors behind the register flickered over every angle of gravel lot, lit bright by flood lamps. Empty. The bell above the door gave a soft jingle, though no door moved, and the air went colder, heavy with ozone and diesel. The trooper's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "You sure you're not playing that jukebox too loud, son?" Then from the counter came a laugh, low and familiar, overlapping 7 voices at once. A spoon tapped twice against porcelain, and when I turned, every cup was steaming. By sunrise, the storm had boiled itself dry, leaving a polka-dotted parking lot of puddles and no tire tracks. The only proof that night existed was the faint smell of diesel and the 7 mugs stacked perfectly by the sink, each leaving a perfect crescent of residue in the exact shape of a half moon. My fry cook, Tina, lit her cigarette over the grill and gave me that look she saves for unsolved murders and expired produce. "They came again, didn't they?" she rasped. Smoke curled above her hairnet. I nodded, poured yesterday's coffee over the drain. She made the sign of the cross, a superstition that clashed nicely with the stones tattoo on her forearm. "All right, boss, but if they start taking sugar again, I'm quittin'. Ghosts don't get cavities." Outside, the sun tried to rise through a film of gray, beautiful in a dead fish way. Trucks speckled the interstate like tin toys heading to nowhere. I flipped the open sign, locked cash into the drawer, and did my daily dance. Count the napkins, polish the counter, wipe down the jukebox. It never stopped freezing on Bruce Springsteen's "I'm on Fire." Irony's got gallows humor. We served the breakfast crowd the way a heart beats, without thinking. Locals came for eggs and gossip, the traveling ones for silence. They all called the place Ray's 24. I called it Purgatory with hash browns. Truth is, I bought it after my old man's rig went off an embankment just 20 miles east in '84. Figured managing a diner for truckers might carve a little sense out of history. It hasn't. Every day, same chores, same rain-smudged horizon. And every night at 1:13, the bell over the door trembles by itself, and I'm reminded that no grave ever learned its lesson about staying shut. Most diners have regulars. Mine had revenants. They always came in the same order, lead rig first, brakes squealing like applause, others trailing at perfect intervals down that stretch of I90 like a chain of polite thunder. Inside, they took the same booths, same stools, same banter each night as if reading lines cut into eternity. "This coffee still tastes like radiator fluid, Ray," one of them would bark, and the others would laugh. I'd fire back the same answer every time. "Keeps you idling, doesn't it?" And they'd nod, pleased, predictable. Familiarity hides terror until you recognize the patterns too precise. On the 3rd night after the storm, a traveling salesman came in around 1. He sat exactly where the leader always took his seat. When the truckers arrived, the air thickened like fryer smoke gone sentient. They didn't stare so much as tilt their heads, expressions slack but focused on the intruder. The salesman turned slowly toward them, and his reflection in the front window didn't match. 7 men shape-blurred into one standing shadow. They stayed longer than usual, didn't order food that night, just kept cups full, steam rising straight despite the ceiling fan. When they finally filed out, I noticed they each left a $5 bill under their saucers, all printed with the same serial number. I ran the register next morning. It hiccuped, spat out receipts with the timestamp 07/14/1984, 1:13 a.m. exactly. Every slip. Tina swore I was pranking her until she touched one, paper freezing to her fingertips. She dropped it, cussed, and it landed blank side up, gone clean of ink. By noon, the receipts curled themselves into gray ash. The smell lingered, diesel mixed with apple pie. State Highway called me later to ask if I'd seen a pair of rigs parked overnight. Cameras had logged ghost taillights near our mile marker. No vehicles present when troopers checked. I told them no. Hung up before they finished the thank you give witnesses who sound too sober. That night, half asleep in the back booth, I heard air brakes sigh outside and a voice over forgotten CB static drifting clear through the walls. "Breaker Ray, we're home for supper." I didn't answer. Some invitations you decline by pretending not to exist. Old diners collect gossip the way friars collect grease, thick, inevitable, half poisonous. Every regular who'd heard about my phantom convoy had a theory, but Myrtle Beatty, my oldest waitress, was the only one who spoke like she'd lived through it. She was rolling silverware one afternoon when I asked what she remembered of '84. The radio murmured Hank Williams over the hiss of the coffee urn. Myrtle's hands paused, eyes fixed on nothing. "That July storm," she said softly, "the one that boiled the asphalt. 7 rigs tangled west of exit 122. They said the road lit up green like northern lights before the crash. Brake lines failed all at once. You could smell diesel from the county line." She looked down, voice thinning. "They were good fellas, too. Always tipped big. Swore they'd be back after Minneapolis." I asked if she remembered any names. She just nodded toward the counter. "Your daddy among 'em, wasn't he?" I said nothing. My father's logbook ended mid-sentence that night, an entry dated July 14th, 1984. Mileage, 68,442. Coffee at Ray's before switching loads. He'd written the same thing every run. I pinned that final page under the till when I bought the place, a private memorial in blue ink. Myrtle sighed. "Every July since, folks see lights where the guardrail bends. Some nights they hear engines, but never headlights. They stop here instead. Habit's a kind of haunting." She gathered her rolled napkins, lean fingers tracing the dull metal utensils as though counting rosary beads. "Ray," she said, meeting my eyes, "you keep pouring their coffee, they'll keep finding their way back. A man ought to quit inviting ghosts before they remember they're dead." I promised I'd try, but I still set out 7 mugs that night. Snow isn't supposed to fall before Halloween in northern Ohio, but that year it came early and hard, blanketing the asphalt in blind white. The highway cameras kept fogging. Salt trucks spun their own circles, one long, slow disaster on time-lapse. I closed the diner at midnight and headed east toward home, tires whispering over the drifts. Mile 122 sat just past the bend, the place every local took a breath before crossing. Tonight, the fog there glowed faintly orange. I thought it was a wreck until I realized the glow moved, in neat pairs, round and red, like taillights pacing in rhythm. I slowed. The light pattern dipped off the shoulder, exactly where my father's rig had gone through the guardrail. Then the road went black. No fire, no impact, just a smell of fuel and the old, too familiar feeling of being watched by something infrastructural. I pulled over, left the engine running, and walked to the guardrail. The snow beneath my boots hissed like hot grease even in 20-degree air. Below, the ravine was empty, yet my ears filled with the creak of cooling metal, men calling to one another over CB microbursts. One voice, I knew it, chuckled, "Keep her steady, Ray. Coffee'll be cold." I stumbled back to the car and drove blind till the diner's neon came into view. My hands shook enough that I dropped the keys twice. Tina arrived at dawn, found me still at the counter with a half pot of untouched brew. Long night? Long drive. She stepped to the door, frowned. "You get visitors after close?" The lot outside bore 7 long pressure marks, each the size of a semi's tire, arranged in a polite row. At their centers lay no snow at all, just a thin crust of ash that fluttered when the heater vents kicked on. When I checked the security feed, every camera between 1:13 and 1:27 a.m. had gone static. Only a faint rolling sound behind the fuzz, rhythmic, deep, like air brakes breathing. I burned the ash with road salt and convinced myself it was residue from a passing convoy. But that night, the booth jukebox lit on its own and played a song cut from the archive decades ago, a cover of Highway to Hell. Didn't even have to feed it a quarter. News of the phantom convoy drifted further than I liked. 2 days after the snow, a woman stepped out of a muddy Subaru wearing big headphones and bigger skepticism. Introduced herself as Casey Lowe, host of the Rust Belt Ghost Lines podcast, here to document the anomalies along I90. She ordered coffee, black, and sunlight through her camera screen. "You're Ray Elliott, right? The guy whose dad went missing in the '84 crash?" She spoke fast, like someone who edits their own sentences for time codes. "People online think your diner's a temporal anchor." "I think it's a greasy spoon with tax problems," I said. But when dusk came and the air turned metallic, she refused to leave. Set up her recorder by the counter, dialed her scanner to channel 19. At 1:10 a.m., the fluorescent lights flickered, same pattern as always. I was grinding more beans when she stiffened, mouth open, eyes wide. "You hear that?" Her recorder whispered with voices, layered like overlapping tracks. Between the static, one word kept shaping itself. "Dispatch to Ray." Casey turned the volume up. The CB behind the counter clicked alive, though it hadn't had power in years. A voice, warm and joking, filled the diner. "Breaker 12, we're backing in." The smell of diesel rolled through the vents. Coffee cups rattled. Morse bursts blinked across the ceiling lights. Short, long, long, short. SOS. Casey ripped her headphones off, eyes wet. "They're not echoes. They're..." She stopped, staring at her recorder. The metal casing glowed cherry red, plastic bubbling. She dropped it. It hit the tile and turned to brittle slag. At 1:27, everything went silent. Only the percolator hissed. She left before dawn, promising to upload what survived. Nothing ever posted. When I checked her seat later, she'd left her notepad behind. Across 3 pages, one phrase repeated in frantic strokes of ink until the paper tore. "Do not serve the special." Most days after that, the diner smelled like burnt coffee and ozone, a chemical marriage no cleaning product could annul. The truckers kept their schedule, 1:13 a.m. sharp, only now they asked for something else. "Special still on, right, Ray?" the leader said. Same cracked grin, voice like shovels scraping gravel. The others echoed him a beat late, a second chorus out of sync. We hadn't offered a special in years. I asked what they meant, pretending it was a joke. He dragged a finger down the menu, nail leaving a black streak that faded into the laminate. "Breaker meal," he said. Clawed at me. I nodded automatically. Brewed coffee, plated nothing but habit. They ate invisible food with careful attention, forks scraping plates in rhythm, chewing slow and grateful. When they finished, every dish shone spotless, dry as kiln glass. After they left, I went to the back office and searched through a shoebox of old papers, receipts, ration tickets, and my father's recipe cards yellowed at the edges. There it was. Breaker meal, written in his block handwriting, ingredients smudged. 2 spoons sugar, 1 spoon oil ash. Beneath that, served to those who ran out of road. Tina peeked over my shoulder. "Tell me that's a joke?" "Dad's truck burned mixed freight," I said slowly. "Diesel soot, powdered sugar. That's what he used to wipe fingerprints off dashboards." At closing, I tried it. The smallest pinch of soot from the grill filter mixed into a cup of black coffee. The smell of dust and nostalgia filled the room. Outside, thunder kept time with my heartbeat. When the bell jingled, I didn't look up. The 7 stools scraped in unison. Their leader watched me stir, something like pride or hunger behind his foggy eyes. "This time on the house," I said. As they drank, the air around their heads pulled tighter, flesh sharpening from blur, color returning where ash had dulled it. For a few seconds, they looked normal. Then the light surged. Every bulb went alabaster white. The men exhaled together, a deep, satisfied sound that rattled the cutlery. When my vision cleared, the cups were full of clean rainwater. The leader tipped his cap, lips moving, but no sound reaching me. They filed out quietly, boots leaving wet prints that steamed off the tile one by one. I poured the remaining mixture down the sink. It hissed, leaving rings of soot shaped like steering wheels. Sometimes generosity's just another way to let the dead refuel. The next few nights blurred together, windshield wiper nights, endless coffee, headlights skating by the window like ghosts rehearsing exits. I tried closing early, locking the door at midnight. Didn't matter. The neon fork flickered itself back on at 1:13 a.m. sharp. When sleep wouldn't come, I started cleaning the supply closet behind the office. Found the old CB radio my father used to joke could pick up angels if you parked high enough on the turnpike. Its cord was coiled and brittle, power light dead. Still, some dumb instinct made me plug it in. The light came on. Channel 19 crackled, weak at first, then steadier, like someone blowing dust off a memory. A man's voice drifted through. "Breaker 19, Ray, I'm stuck east side of 122. You got your coffee on?" My mouth went dry. "Who is this?" "Ray Sar," he said, chuckling like it was the easiest truth in the world. Then, "We're trying to make it home, son, but the road keeps foldin'." Static swallowed the rest, replaced by fragments of other voices, the 7 drivers, overlapping as they'd done at the counter. I grabbed a diner map off the wall, traced my finger along the interstate. Every flicker of static matched a dot of fluorescent marker I'd drawn years ago, places my dad's convoy had stopped before it burned. The last burst of radio snow shaped itself into a sound, almost like a printer spitting out a page. Search. 122. The idea was madness, but simple. They were marking a route, a way back or a way out. I brought the portable outside. The lot was empty, except for soot rings turning faintly blue under moonlight. The CB hissed softer now, the kind of sound that fits between wind and heartbeat. "Breaker, Ray," the voice whispered, fainter but closer than static should allow. "Roads open. Follow the lights." Out on the interstate, 7 new reflectors blinked into life, perfectly spaced, leading east toward mile 122. No rigs, no drivers, just a glowing invitation etched across the dark. I told myself I'd only drive far enough to see those lights disappear, to prove it was all coincidence on highway fog. But by the second marker, the world went silent. No snow hiss, no engine hum, just the CB radio breathing in the passenger seat, whispering half-sentences through static. The last light waited at the turnout above mile 122, where the guardrail curled like a scar over the ravine. Winter weeds bent under the wind, and beyond them, something shimmered, a reflection without a source. I parked, flashlight trembling in my fist. The condemned property signs should have been unreadable after 40 years, but they looked freshly nailed, red letters bleeding in the beam. A half-collapsed chain-link fence leaned across the service road, but someone had cut it recently. On the other side, the trees thinned to reveal 7 rusted tractors frozen in line, haulers stripped to the bone. Tarps fluttered like flags at half-mast. Each cab roof was caved in, but clean of snow, as if heat lingered beneath. I climbed onto the lead rig, pushed the creaking door. Inside smelled of old coffee grounds and salt. Dash lights flickered. An odometer blinked zeros, then froze at 068442. The logbook lay open on the seat, all pages blank except the last. Neat blue ink dated July 14th, 1984. Signed, Ray Elliott, Jr. I'd barely whispered my own name before the CB on the dash clicked alive. Dispatch to Ray, convoys ready. A cold gust tunneled through the broken windshield, carrying the breath of diesel and rain. The other trucks replied, engines that hadn't run in decades coughing awake one at a time, synchronized heartbeat pounding up from the ground. Ghost rigs idled without smoke, headlights blooming. I stumbled backward as 7 beams swung toward the highway, halting just long enough for one voice to drift from the nearest cab, calm and familiar. Climb in, son, we've got miles yet to burn. The engines shouldn't have run, but they purred in perfect time, 7 enormous lungs relearning air. I stood between them, boots sinking into the thawing mud, wind peppered with heat that came from nowhere. One by one, the headlights steadied, not fluorescent yellow like halogens, but amber, like fire seen through whiskey. I climbed onto the lead rig, my father's seat. Beneath the glow of the instrument panel, the gauges read nonsense. Speedometer pegged, tack asleep, fuel full. The CB hissed. Route home, someone whispered. The logbook sat open across my knees. Next to my name, fresh ink bled through the paper, numbers of mileage already rising, though we hadn't moved. I pulled the flare gun from the glove box. The last of the diesel tanks lay 15 yards off, its shell stamped with faded hazard symbols. I knew what I had to do. Fires cleanse, or at least they simplify. Outside, the rigs idled. "You boys hungry?" I called. No one answered, but I swear I heard 7 chuckles roll through the wind. I kicked the safety off the flare, angled it toward the ruptured tank. A single pop, a streak of red, then ignition. The night lit up like a second sunrise. Flames climbed the clouds, painting them bloody orange. Metal groaned, glass melted, the sounds of laughter blended with the crack before the shockwave hit. I dove behind a tire as heat tore through the camp. Boom after boom ripped across the ravine. The trucks didn't explode, they ignited from within, each cab glowing white like a lantern, ghosts dissolving in their own bodies. In that brilliance I saw faces, clear for the first time, men mid-grin, relieved, my father among them, tipping his cap as if clocking out. They raised their hands in a brief wave, then became streaks of light, stretching east along the highway before vanishing entirely. The roar faded to a low hum, the way seashells hold an ocean long after tide's out. When smoke thinned, all that remained were outlines in ash shaped like tire treads into the horizon. The trail looked endless, like the road finally let them go. Firelight reflected off my truck's windshield, and for the first time since '84, the gauge for temperature dropped clean to cold. They found me at dawn, slumped beside the ruined rigs, clothes stiff with soot, skin smelling of diesel and rain. The paramedics said the fire shouldn't have left the chassis intact, yet metal cooled like it had been blessed. They radioed it in as a controlled detonation. I didn't correct them. At the hospital, nurses couldn't get a steady vitals read. My pulse kept sinking with the beeping of passing trucks outside, jumping every 1 minute 13 seconds. When they adjusted the monitor, it flatlined, but I could still talk. I told them to call Tina, told them to keep the diner's lights off that night. They nodded the way people do to dying men. By evening, my hands had gone pale gray around the nails, small soot crescents taking root in the cuticles. I asked the nurse for a pen and wrote one sentence across the discharge clipboard. Order up. Give 'em peace. They released me 2 days later against medical advice. I drove home slow, skin colder than the steering wheel, windows down to prove I still breathed steam in the air. The horizon shimmered red against highway snowdrifts. Back at the diner, the neon fork was dead for the first time in years. Inside, counters clean, no smell of frying oil, only quiet. I sat in booth 3, the one my father favored, and waited. Sometime after 1 a.m., headlights bloomed faint at the bend, distant and harmless. A warmth spread through my chest, slow, steady, like the rumble of diesel idling under ribs. When my heart finally stopped, the coffee in front of me was still steaming. They told stories for weeks about the fire over mile 122, how the sky turned red, how no one could find wreckage when they went looking. The diner reopened quietly under new management by midwinter. City inspectors signed off, insurance paid miracles, machines hummed again. Highway travelers just wanted pancakes, not answers. Her name was Marla Hendricks, 30 years old, degree in hospitality and disbelief in ghosts. She scrubbed the chrome till it blushed and patched the sign so the neon fork sputtered "Open 24." Locals warned her about the 113 shift, but she laughed, penciling it onto the schedule like any other hour. Mostly she worked in peace, until small things began to misbehave. Receipt tape printed random dates from the 1980s. The air smelled faintly of gasoline when the jukebox powered up. Every night she found 7 mugs lined beside the sink, though records showed no customers after midnight. In early March, a trucker stopped for pie, pointed to a faded photograph still tacked above the register. "That your old boss?" Marla studied the man. Slim, sandy-haired, eyes the color of headlights through fog. "You knew him?" The trucker smiled. Everyone on the road knew Ray Elliott. He left cash that felt warm in her hand, older bills, the kind with small faces and rough paper. When she looked up, he was gone, but 7 rigs idled neatly outside, soundless, chrome reflecting stars that weren't there. She flipped the sign to closed, poured fresh coffee into 7 stainless mugs, and whispered, because silence expected manners, "Order up." Sometime past 1 a.m., the snow began again, soft, steady, like static turned solid. Through the glass, Marla saw the rigs still lined up, headlights glowing dim and patient. She wiped her hands on her apron, heart pacing with the pumps outside, and stepped closer. At the counter's edge waited a man she hadn't heard the bell admit. He wore a gray truck stop jacket that might once have been red, cap pulled low enough to shade his eyes. A faint smell of smoke and motor oil clung to him. "You keepin' the place runnin'?" he asked. She nodded, trying to. He slid a diner matchbook across the counter. On it, handwritten in blue ink, "Keep the coffee hot. We pay in stories." Marla looked down for barely a breath. When she looked up, he and the rigs were gone. Outside, only fresh snow and warm tire marks remained, steaming into the cold. The jukebox clicked alive on its own, humming a weary bar of Born to Run. She poured a cup, set it in booth 3, and opened the blinds to the highway stretching east. Somewhere past the bend, Diesel whispered in gratitude. Out on I90, if you're ever driving too long and the glow of a single neon fork cuts through the dark, stop in. Tell them you heard about the coffee that never cools. Just remember to leave before 1:13 a.m. Some deliveries never end.